Morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be back in Grand Rapids here because when I got out of design school, my very first job in design was here in Grand Rapids, so it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to talking to you about games and education because these are two of my favorite subjects. And in that spirit, let's first do a pop quiz. Think to yourself, what do you suppose these people all have in common? If you guessed that they each faced an epic failure in your life, you were right. It may have been a failed marriage, or losing their job, not getting elected, or failing time and time again looking for the right filament for making a light bulb. But we know to succeed we need to fail, but it feels very, very harsh. What is an epic fail anyway? To me, in the game community, we often use this as an opportunity to fail so big that it takes the sting out of loss. When you have an epic fail, you know that you failed and you know why you failed. It's a moment of teaching and learning. So you or someone you know may have experienced an epic fail. And you don't have to talk to your doctor about it at all. You can play some games. I remember the very first time that I heard about young people doing tournaments for sports, and each child was winning a trophy at the end. And I felt very instantly old and instantly cranky because I felt like we were somehow denying these children of this character-building experience that's called failure and losing. It's important to experience these things at a young age, and I'm concerned that if we wait too long, the stakes become very, very high. And we all know, or maybe we are a high school student right now, where you're building your lexicon of different grades you've earned over time, and it feels like if you get one B-, that it could ruin your chances of getting into your college of your dreams. So this talk began almost as a protest, and it's evolved into something much bigger, and I have a bigger idea that I want to share with you today. I really think that games may be the solution. So you're asking yourself, why games? Why would we take something that's for children and think that it's going to be somehow going to help raising the next generation of young people? One of my favorite sayings that I think about games and failure is that games let us lose without feeling like a loser, and they let us fail without feeling like a failure. There's just something about a game that it's real and unreal at the same time. It's a system that we create that has these irrational rules that we have to behave and obey in, and when we lose, we don't like it, but it's not the end of the world. And I think there's something magical about games encourage us to try again, whereas in real life, when we fail, we often see these as a fork in the road where we're done with that, we failed at that, we're not good at that, let's move on. So at this point, I would like to talk about three other things before talking about my big idea. I want to share with you a little bit of my history as a game designer. I want to talk to you about some of the qualities of a good game that I think we need in game development. And also, I want to talk about my observations of the landscape of games for education right now. Even before you teach with games, they are so amazing that they can be replayed over and over again. That's how you get better with them. School is like a crossword puzzle that you do with permanent ink. It feels very, very harsh, like I said earlier. So a little bit about myself. I began as a professional game designer 17 years ago. And I worked with Parker Brothers in Massachusetts, and we created games all up and down the technology food chain, everything from card games to dice games to board games to handheld electronic games. And as I moved into my contract as a game designer, I was more and more interested in games for learning and games to help teach people. Ultimately, my embracing of social media and social games brought me to a company called MeU Health, where I'm using tools to make Facebook games, iPhone games, and even games that use pedometers that encourage you to move more each day. And as some funny coincidence, today is my 2-year anniversary with MeU Health. So I thought that was really cool. Thank you. In the serious game space, that's a term they use for games that do more than entertain. It feels like we've turned a corner, and instead of talking about why should we make games that do things awesome, we're talking about what are the games we should make. because all fingers are pointing at a game called Fold It. And I don't know if you've heard of this game. It's a science game. It was big in the news last year because it's a very complicated computer modeling game where you actually fold proteins and help real scientists determine what these proteins can do to actually cure diseases. And they identified, gamers that is, identified a protein model that is instrumental in fighting AIDS. So it took scientists 10 years, they were struggling with this, and these gamers on the internet solved it in 3 weeks. People really want to leverage the power and potential of games to do good and to solve problems, but they just don't know how. And I think knowing what makes a good game is the first step. To that end, as a professional game designer, years ago, I made an actual board game that I sat down with potential clients and students of game design to roll some dice, move on a board, collect some stickers, and actually learn in a lightweight way what are the qualities of a good game. And I want to share just a few of those with you today. There are 5 qualities of a good game, and the first being, it seems kind of obvious, is it fun? Too many times, a game that's made with all these grand ideas to solve problems, they forget that it has to be fun or no one will use it. Also, is the game easy to use? Really, you have to design for the first-time user. Today, everyone's busy, has no time. If you have to design something that requires too much thinking, they're not going to use it. And who is this for? What's the marketing hook? Make something that's going to appeal to people. Does it make them stop and stare? Does something jump out at them that's really exciting to cut through all the noise in their busy lives? This is one of my favorites. Games are not single-use products. They have to have what we call repeat play value, where time and time again you play it, you get challenged, you try again, it kind of grows with you, and you get in this state of flow where the game is easy enough that you can do it, but it's hard enough that it's challenging, and that's really in repeat play value. And finally, who is that target audience for the game? You really need to know if it's for children, if it's for adults, because this influences everything from the colors that you choose to the packaging design, to even the tone and the language. Is it funny? Is it serious? That's all important when you know who the target audience is. So now I'd like to look at my observations of this landscape of what's being created for games for education. And I've been going to game conferences for years where people are talking about amazing projects that they're doing, and I always come away inspired and motivated to do my own work for games for education and games for health. But I see this almost a canyon with the divide in the middle, where on one side we have low-tech to no-tech solution games, and on the other side we have high-tech solution games. And we're all familiar with, back in school, you played schoolyard games, or Duck, Duck, Goose. The teacher might use matching games or word jumbles or trivia in the classroom in conjunction with their class material. Even things like TV shows will make their way into playing Jeopardy, for example. On the high-tech side of this canyon, where a lot of the work for edutainment and serious games, we're even hearing about gamification nowadays. People focus on the latest technology. It's always online. It uses tablet computers and smartphones. We're really making the social experience of sitting together recreated online. One of the most exciting things happening in this space is this idea of creating a virtual world where students go in and actually learn collaboratively, and it's really amazing, it's really engaging, but it's also very expensive. And these MMOs, massively multiplayer online games, I have great respect for them, but I wonder, what kind of games can we create right now that are going to help all people use the power of games in their classroom? And really, I think that opportunity is board games. If you think about board games, they're inexpensive, they're portable, and they're guaranteed to work. You don't have to worry about an update or having the right hardware to work with them. A board game, you can take it down off the shelf, you can dust it off like a book, and then playing with people is going to have the same learning impact as when it was created. There's one caveat, though. No one likes to pick up a game with pieces that are missing. So this is one of my tips for you. There's an amazing thing happening these days with the rise of German board games. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but apparently the Germans are completely crazy for board games. They have an annual game conference where over 100,000 people get together and they talk about and play and celebrate the latest board games. And these are no longer your old board games where it sat in the corner and you did a turn and it took hours and hours and it never finished. These games are using novel game mechanics. They have fascinating exploration and discovery themes. And they really are made with quality components like beautiful cards and thick cardboard, and they're famous for these painted wooden pieces. They really provide what I call a genuine social experience, because right now a lot of people might play social games online, asynchronous games on their phones, but it's not the same as sitting around a table and having a real genuine experience. The flagship of these German board games is called the Settlers of Catan, and maybe some of you have heard about it, but if you haven't, check it out, it's a lot of fun. In 1994, this game took the world by storm out of Germany. It was brought to America in 2004, and I love this game because when you play the game, all people at the table are engaged, even though it's not their turn. And there's novel ways to do it where if I'm waiting for my turn and somebody rolls the dice during their turn, I might get something even though it's not my turn, for example. This game has been sold in 15 million copies around the world. It's been translated into 30 languages, and it's been called the board game of our time. Another field of game design that I'm really excited about is this idea of researchers and scientists talking about what's called epistemic games. And epistemic games, quite simply, are games that teach players to think like the characters that are depicted in those games. And by some coincidence, in my own development as a game designer over the years, I was kind of doing this naturally, where I want to make people jump into a game and have the rules and then what you're supposed to do imbued in the actual components, because everyone knows no one reads the rules, and if you can build a game that has you thinking like the people that are in the game. So for example, these are the ultimate role-playing game. Imagine in the school if you sit down and play a board game about what it's like to be a scientist, and the actual game mechanics that you play in the game might be to do research, to do experiments, and actually apply for funding. This is all possible because the power of theme. We do this in entertainment games right now, but not in a deep and meaningful way. If you play a game of Operation where you're taking pieces out of Cavity Sam, it's a lot of fun. You see the nose light up, but you might not know what it's like to be a real doctor. A lot of us have played the massively popular game on our phone or an iPad called Draw Something, where you're drawing pictures with your friends and guessing. And this is a great time, but you might not know what it's like to be a professional artist from playing that game. In my professional career as a freelance game designer, I work with a company in Boston called the Boston Private Industry Council, and we created a board game to use in the classroom and in summer programs to teach young people that there's life after high school and that maybe you should put off what you want now for future gain. And this is just to give you an example of what it's like for a game designer to create a concept for a game. This is what it looks like to do some storyboards with game mechanics sketched out. And then we have a prototype game that you play test over and over again until you tweak it. And then this is a final rough mock-up. Now, this was used in the summer programs at the YMCA, and the kids love it, but they really missed having the high-quality components that you find in a off-the-shelf great game with nice quality pieces and good cards, because this prototype took only about $15,000 to create. But I want to think bigger. I mean, right now in school, it feels like we're teaching to learn standards, but whatever happened to thinking about learning about yourself? There's a tremendous focus on STEM initiatives, and I don't know what that means, so I had to look it up. If you look up a word that you don't know, that means that you're successfully collaborating across disciplines. And for all those of you that don't know what STEM means, it means science, technology, engineering, and math. I remember the day that I heard this quote at a Games for Education conference, and it really struck me as very powerful because when you're in school, you don't realize that you're preparing for a life outside of school where you may grow into a person that you don't even know who they are yet. Because school is really the last place where knowing the same thing as everyone else has any value. So how can we facilitate games in the classroom that encourage people to find who they are, who they could be. I really think that the advice I got from my parents when I was a kid was really important, where they told me, Billy, if you love your job, it's not work. And I took that to heart at a young age, and I thought I would go to school for engineering, and then at the last minute I said, I want to go to art school. And there was a big fight in the household. I don't want my kid drawing pictures for a living, on the corner. But really, I was fortunate that I was able to experience at a young age that I loved drawing, I loved art, I loved design, and I want to have that experience be communicated to young people in board games in the classroom, where we create a whole library of epistemic board games that are about different types of careers, and then have children just play them. And if they like it, they play it again. If they fail at it and hate it, they go, I learned something about myself. I don't like math. I don't like to write. I love to cook. You can learn these things in a lightweight way with a dice game, a card game, or a board game. So imagine a future where we have all of these, like a library of board games, where the kids play them in the classroom when they have free time. And it's not just about taking a survey where you're filling in bubbles, and at the end of 100 questions, it says, you might be an engineer. You actually would experience what it's like to think like an engineer in these games. It's not just going to a guidance counselor who may or may not give you advice about what fits you. I really think that playing a life and trying and failing successfully in the game experience is really good for people. And when you pair this with creating these high-quality board games that are costing a fraction of what it costs for these super awesome online, MMOs of games, I think it's really a good opportunity. So in closing, I would like to encourage all of you to leave here, go play a game, try one that's actually new that you've never played before, go outside your comfort zone, fail spectacularly, and then learn something about yourself. Thank you so much.